Good evening and good day, everyone. Welcome to episode 30, the 30th live episode of Ask Abhijit. So let me see who all is here. I can see Aditya Bharadwaj, Vineet, RKDM, Abhilash, and Jeet, Shreyas, Mandar, Dheeraj, Ojas, Aditi, Pushpak, Harsh, Pavan, Arjun, Soumya, Vinayak, Padma Patil, Saurabh, Bhavesh. Good evening, good day, everybody. It's great to see you all. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your wishes. Wishing you all a very happy Guru Purnima. So, as you know, today we are discussing education. Today is not a Q&A session. Until now, the past 29 episodes, I have done Q&A sessions. Today, it's more of a presentation. I'm going to talk about the education system of India, the problems that we have, and the solutions that should be implemented. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's get into it. And we will begin with the main question, which is, what is education and what is the purpose of education? Right? So that's the basic question we have to understand first of all, if you want to discuss this topic. What is the purpose of education? So the purpose of education is to acquire and master the basic skills and tools that you need to be successful and confident and productive and happy and valuable in life, and to achieve your full potential in life and contribute your best in developing yourself and your family and your society and your country and even the world. So the purpose of the education system is to give you the skills and the tools that will enable you to do these things. And for the nation, the purpose of education is to provide the nation with confident, highly skilled, productive, and valuable young citizens and future leaders who can strengthen the nation and take the nation forward in the future and ensure a successful and prosperous future for the nation. So that is the purpose of the education system for the nation. So that is what we have to understand. That is the purpose of education. Now, then the question is, who are the stakeholders? Who should be the stakeholders of the education system? Who must the system serve? And to understand this, we have to basically ask these questions: that who is the system actually supposed to serve? Who is supposed to gain the most from the system, and who stands to lose the most from the system if the system doesn't work or if it underperforms? And whose rights and privileges are paramount in the system? Whose rights and privileges are protected and sacrosanct? Whose rights and privileges take precedence, come first, and are inviolable? So it's very clear that the answer to these questions is that the students are the stakeholders. It is their rights and privileges that should be paramount in the education system. And also, the stakeholders are not only the students, but also the families of the students and the nation also. The nation is also a stakeholder. So if the education system performs well, the students will benefit, the families of the students will benefit, and the nation itself will benefit. So the stakeholders of the education system, the people the system serves, are the students, and it is the nation. So that is also a very important thing to remember. Now, what is the desired outcome of education? Let's talk about lower education, the lower education system. So we know that we have these different strata of education system. We have the kindergarten or Montessori education system, nursery, junior KG, and senior KG. Then we have the primary education system, standard 1 to standard 7. Then we have secondary education, 8 to 10, higher secondary education, 10 to 12, etc. So I would like to put all of this into one category, the lower education system. So what is the desired outcome for a student from the lower education system? So basically, it should prepare you for success in life, which means that first of all, it should enable the students to master communication skills, how to read, how to write, how to speak, and how to express yourself clearly and unambiguously. That's number one. Number two, it should enable the students to master the art and the science of critical thinking and learning, which means you should learn how to ask questions. You should know what questions to ask. You should understand the importance of skepticism. You should know how to find information and where to find the information. And you should learn how to verify the authenticity and accuracy of information. It should teach you the art of discernment, how to discern between good information and bad information. It should teach you how to absorb and process information. It should teach you logic. It should teach you mental models. It should teach you the scientific method. So, that is what is the art and science of critical thinking and learning. Thirdly, it should allow the students to master basic mathematics, how to add, how to subtract, how to multiply, divide, fractions, arithmetic. That's all you need to succeed in life. You don't need algebra to succeed in life. You don't need trigonometry. You don't need calculus. All that is worthless if you unless you want to be a scientist. So all you need to learn is basic mathematics. And next, the system should the outcome of lower education is that it should enable the students to understand themselves. The student should learn to understand himself or herself. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses and the areas that need development? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? What is my unique personality? What are my aptitudes? This is called understanding yourself, understanding who you really are. The current education system doesn't teach you that. So this is something that's essential for young children. Next, the next outcome is that the kids should understand their culture and its value. So it should teach the kids ethics, morality, values. What is the difference between right and wrong? What is the difference between good and bad? And what's the difference between success and failure from your culture and your values? That's what the education system should teach children. Next, it should enable children to understand their history, their country's history, with no illusions and no lies. It should also teach them the country's geography, the lessons of history, and what is the cause and effect chain of history that you learn from history, the causality, which is the most critical part of history. Next, it should teach the children how to understand the world beyond your country and your region, which means world geography, world history, world culture. And also, it should teach children the basics of personal finance. It should teach children the basics of national interest. And it should teach children the basics of leadership. So this is the set of desired outcomes that should come out of the lower education system. Next, what is the desired outcome of the higher education system? So that's a different set of outcomes that we want. First of all, the higher education system should give students crystal clarity about what career path is best for them based on their individual aptitudes and qualities and strengths. Secondly, it should help the students develop their personal vision of what they want to achieve in their life based on their aptitudes and qualities and strengths. So it should give the students complete clarity about the step by step path they need to take once they are out of the education system in order to turn their life's vision into actual reality. It should tell you exactly what you need to do over the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years of your life if you want to achieve your objectives. So that is a very important outcome that should come out of the higher education system. And lastly, the higher education system should give you the real world professional skills that you need to succeed in your chosen or desired career path. Basically, it should make you ready, so that you should be ready to hit the ground running. That's how ready you should be. So that's what is the desired, that's the set of desired outcomes of the higher education system. That's how it should be. I'm not saying it is like that. That's how it should be. Now, we spoke about the stakeholders. The stakeholders of the education system should be the children or the students, their families, and the nation. Now, who are the actual stakeholders in the Indian education system? So, once again, to understand the stakeholders, we ask the questions: who is the system supposed to serve? Who is supposed to gain the most from the system? And who stands to lose the most if the system doesn't work properly, right? And also, whose rights and privileges are paramount, are protected and sacrosanct, whose rights and privileges take precedence over others, whose rights come first, whose rights are inviolable, and whose rights are secondary or immaterial. So basically, you have to ask yourself the question that if a student, I'm not saying the students should do this, but if a student were to, let's say, uh, behave poorly, or do something mischievous, then what happens to the student? That student will be immediately punished, right? If they behave inappropriately in some way, so they are immediately punished. If they don't perform well in school, they are failed and they have to repeat a class for 1 year. And if they keep on performing badly, they are thrown out of the school, they are expelled. Now my question is this: if a teacher were to perform badly, not teach properly, what will happen to them? If a teacher were to behave inappropriately in some way, what is the action that's taken against them? And the answer is nothing. So in reality, the rights and privileges of the teachers and the staff come above the rights and the privileges of the students in the Indian education system. So the rights of the students are secondary, or they are immaterial. And also ask the question: who has to follow the most rules and regulations in the Indian system? Who has to face all the bureaucracy and all the red tape and all the endless procedures? Who has to stand in long, interminable queues? It's the students, not the teachers, not the staff, not the employees. It's the students who suffer the most. So clearly, in the Indian education system, even though the students are supposed to be the stakeholders, it's actually not the case. It's actually the teachers and the employees and the staff who are the real stakeholders. Isn't that strange? So the question is, does the Indian education system serve those whose stated purpose it is to serve? Or does it serve somebody else entirely? Does it serve as an employment generation scheme under the pretext of being a system of education? That's the question we have to ask, and the answer is yes. Because the rights and the privileges of employees and teachers and principals and bureaucrats and administrators and clerks and peons and staff always take precedence over the needs of the students and over the national interest. So this system serves as a cash cow. It serves as a money generating machine, a cash for degrees scheme run by people who are interested in personal profits and not in the interest of the nation. So the rights and privileges of the business owners take precedence over the needs of the students. So essentially, what we find is that the Indian education system is a scam which relies, first of all, on fear. Get a degree or you will never get any job. You will have no employment. You will have no future. Secondly, it relies on scarcity. There are very few good quality schools or colleges or universities. There are very few seats available. So pay whatever we demand. Thirdly, the Indian education system relies on monopoly. Basically, it says that we own the institutes. We are the only ones who can issue the degrees that you need. And without a degree, you're nothing. So pay up. Pay whatever we demand. And lastly, the Indian education system relies upon a government, politician, bureaucracy, business, corporate nexus, which is a small, close knit, self serving ecosystem of vested interests that leech off the country and its people and enrich themselves and do not basically give anything back in return to the people whom they serve, whom they are supposed to serve. So that is what the Indian education system is, my friends. What it tells you is that most of our career choices are compromises. Whether we become a teacher or a CA or an accountant or a banker or a programmer or a government bureaucrat or a farmer, whatever, it's always because of compulsion. It's because we have to compromise. We don't have a real choice in what we get to do with our life, because there are only a few avenues or paths, career paths available to us. For example, agriculture happens to be the primary source of livelihood for about 58% of India's population, but it accounts only for less than 20% of India's GDP. So it tells you that it is not a profitable industry. It is a highly inefficient industry. It's a very bad livelihood for most people. And yet 58% of Indians are engaged in agriculture because they have no option. So that's the kind of system we are in as of today. So the question then is, how did we get here? Was India always like this? And obviously, India was not like this. So the education system that we currently are laboring under, I call it the 21st century colonial commercial education system. It is basically an offshoot of the British colonial education system that was instituted during the British Raj. But before that colonial system, we had the ancient indigenous Indian education system that basically has a lineage that goes back many thousands of years. And the British destroyed the system in the 19th century. So what was the original system like? The original Indian system. So in the original Indian system, you had basically school education revolved around temples. So every town, every city, every village, every locality had a temple, and these temples were not just places of worship; they were places of education. So you had teachers, the gurus, or whatever title they would have. They would impart basic education to children, and then you had higher education in larger temples or viharas, and then you had the great universities like Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, Sharda, Udantapuri, and so many more. So it was a uh, very well structured education system, and a system that had been refined over thousands of years. That was the original and indigenous education system. So basically these gurus or these teachers, they were fully supported by the state and the community. They were an integral part of every local community. They were full time and lifelong teachers. For example, when Nalanda University was destroyed, after it was destroyed, a 90-year-old teacher named Rahul Shribhadra was still attempting to conduct classes for a few students, even though the university had been destroyed and everybody had been killed. And yet, at the age of 90 plus, he was still trying to teach. So that was a lifelong career and a lifelong occupation. It was basically that's what they did for the life. And the interesting thing is that these teachers, they taught for free. There was no fees ever. They did not ever charge any fees, right? Because the education system was subsidized by the community. People would donate money to temples, the local temples. We still follow the practice, but we have forgotten why we do it. So people would donate money to temples so that would support the education system. And also the kings and the local kingdoms would support the universities and the mahavihars and all that. So that was the system of education in India. It was completely free. It was open to all, boys, girls, whatever strata of society. Even foreigners would come and take education. As we know very well, Chinese and Greek and Scythian students used to come into India to acquire education, and everything was for free. Now there's the question of what is Gurudakshina. People will say, what is Gurudakshina? They used to charge money. A Gurudakshina was a once in a lifetime voluntary payment of anything you could afford after your education was over. So it was a one time voluntary thing. It was not compulsory. It was your choice, and you could give whatever you could afford. and if you wanted, you do not have to give anything at all. So that is a Gurudakshina. A Gurudakshina was not a monthly payment with 20% off if you pay yearly. Okay, there was no such thing. The education was completely free, and these teachers, these gurus, would have lifelong relationships with their students, and they had a very small number of students over their entire lifetime because there were so many temples and so many of these teachers, right? And you had different levels of teachers. So you had shikshak, who was basically an instructor who gave information. You had adhyapak, you had upadhyaya, you had acharya, and then you had the gurus, who were the wisest and most knowledgeable of all. So this term that we use today, guru, we have really cheapened it a lot. We think that every teacher is a guru. What nonsense. Our teachers today are not gurus. A guru was something of an extremely high stature. Today's teachers, they pay us, they teach us in exchange for money. The moment you stop paying them, they'll stop teaching you, and they have no real relationship with you. So teachers are not gurus. Teachers are just teachers. They are basically service providers. They teach you this false education, this fake history and all that, in exchange for money. Gurus were something very different. So gurus are not teachers, teachers are not gurus. Gurus never charged money, right? So basically, now let's talk about stakeholders. Okay, so what was the purpose? Let's compare these education systems. What was the purpose of the indigenous education system of India compared with the colonial system of the British and the commercial system that we have today? So the purpose of the indigenous education system was to empower the students. It was to provide the students multiple paths to success in their life. It was to strengthen the society, to strengthen the kingdom, to strengthen dharma, because dharma was the foundation of society, and it was to strengthen India's civilization. The purpose of the colonial, the British Raj system of education, was to deracinate and mentally enslave all of our ancestors. It basically equated success with government jobs. There was only one path to success, that was to acquire a government job as a clerk or a peon, nothing higher than that. The purpose was to weaken and divide India's society. Its purpose was to strengthen British rule. Its purpose was to destroy dharma, to destroy India's civilization, to re-engineer society, and to impose the English language upon us, and it was very successful. And the purpose of today's commercial education system that we are all seeing everywhere today, it is almost the same as the purpose of the colonial system. It is to deracinate and completely mentally enslave us. Yeah, it is to equate success with either government job or a very few small avenues. It is to continue to weaken and divide India's society. It is the purpose of the commercial system is to enrich this politician, bureaucrat, and business owner ecosystem so that they keep getting richer at our expense. It is to continue to destroy dharma, to destroy whatever is left of India's civilization. It is to re-engineer society and create these people who are completely deracinated and who have no connection with their culture. And it is to continue to impose English upon us. So this is the purpose of today's education system. Who are the stakeholders? In the indigenous Indian education system, the stakeholders were the students, their families, the community, and the state or the kingdom or the country or the civilization. The stakeholders in the colonial system were the British Empire, the teachers, the headmasters, the principals, the staff, and the employees, not the students, not the people, right? And today's commercial education system, the stakeholders are the business owners who are on top, then various vested interests who are behind the business owners. So maybe some foreign religious group is trying to fund this business, or some other thing, some other political agency, etc. So that is called vested interests. So the vested interests are very much stakeholders. Then you have teachers, principals, staff, and employees, and students don't figure anywhere in this. So this is the commercial education system that we are seeing today. So it does not treat students or the country as stakeholders. The only purpose is to enrich the business owners and to serve certain vested interests whose aim is to basically re-engineer India's society. So that is what we are seeing today. Now, let's talk about some problems. We have discussed many problems. There are more problems. Let me talk about one more problem, which is the English advantage. Everybody in India talks about the English advantage. English, English, English. We are so better than other countries like China or others because we can speak English. So it is a great advantage that we have. Well, my friends, this is a complete myth, and I'm going to demonstrate that it is a myth. So basically, the arguments that people give are that English is the language of science and technology. One cannot study science and technology without knowing English. English is the language of modernity. English is a global language, it's the universal language. There can be no progress without English. So uh, that's the kind of arguments we get not only from ordinary people but also from our so-called leaders and business leaders and other people. So that's the kind of argument we see everywhere in our society and our media. So let me show you some examples that bust this myth. Let's talk about Japan. Japan, my friends, is the world's most technologically advanced nation. Japan has reached the pinnacle of scientific and technological superstardom. It is the world's most advanced and most high tech society. It leads the world in every technology and industry. And all education in Japan is in the Japanese medium. Isn't that strange? Let's talk about China. China is currently ascending to scientific and technological excellence, as you know very well, my friends. Chinese products and technology are increasingly sophisticated and world class. And most scientists in China and engineers in China don't speak a word of English. They don't care to speak a word of English. And all education in China is in the Chinese medium. They are excelling in computing. They are excelling in artificial intelligence. They are excelling in every industry. They are excelling in quantum computing. They are about to overtake the US as the world's biggest economy. And all the education is in the Chinese medium, not in English. Isn't that strange? What happened to the English advantage? Let's talk about Korea. Korea is a high tech society. It is one of the most technologically advanced nations in the world. It has world class science and technology industries. You've heard of LG, Samsung, Hyundai, Kia Motors, etc. Well, in Korea also, all the education is in the Korean medium. Let's talk about Germany. Germany is Europe's science and technology and industry powerhouse. It has historically been the most technologically and industrially advanced nation in Europe. And strangely, all education is in the German medium. There's not a word of English. Wow, isn't that strange? Let's talk about France. Vive la France. You've heard of the Rafale aircraft. It's one of the best fighter aircraft in the world. You heard of the Scorpion submarines, some of the most advanced submarines in the world. They have so many industries, some of the world's best industries. They have the world's best nuclear program, etc. Well, in France, all education is in the French medium. They will never speak a word of English in France. Why is that? And how are they able to progress without English? I wonder. And what about this country? Our favorite country in India. We love Russia, don't we? Russia is a former superpower. It has world class science, technology, and space industries. It has world class scientists. It has some of the best physicists in the history of the world. And in Russia, all education is in the Russian medium. So, what happened to the English advantage? Let me give you some more examples, my friends, of the English advantage. There are two discoveries in the 20th century that completely changed the world. One is quantum mechanics, and the second is relativity. And these are some of the people who were the pioneers of quantum mechanics and relativity. Max Planck, the inventor, the father of the quantum, was German. He did all his research in German. His education was in German. Albert Einstein was German. He spoke German. He wrote his research papers in German. Max Born was German. Niels Bohr was from Denmark. He did not speak English when he was being educated. Erwin Schrödinger was Austrian and he studied in German. Louis de Broglie was French. He studied in French. He wrote his research papers in French. Willem Wien was German. Henri Becquerel was French. Wolfgang Pauli was Austrian. Werner Heisenberg was German. Arnold Sommerfeld was German. George Uhlenbach was Dutch. Samuel Goudsmit was Dutch. Paul Ehrenfest was Dutch. And Enrico Fermi, Ettore Majorana, Emilio Segre, they were Italians. And all of their research was done either in German or French or Italian. All of their research papers were written in German, French, and or Italian. Had these people been forced to first learn English and then try to learn physics, then most of them would never have been able to graduate school or college. And there would have been no quantum mechanics, no relativity, no transistors or microchips or semiconductors, microprocessors, no USB drives, no solid state drives. You would not have any smartphones or DSLRs, no computers, no smartphones. The entire computer industry would not exist. You would not have lasers, LEDs, fiber optics. You would have no telecommunications industry. These communication that we are having today would not happen. We would not be able to make phone calls. We would not have any GPS, any MRI, etc. So all of this that we are enjoying today, the fruits of these uh, inventions and discoveries, quantum mechanics and relativity, it is all thanks to the German language, the French language, and Italian. There was no English involved in this. So I hope that I have been able to put across the fact that English is no great language. It is not the language of science and technology. It is actually an inferior language that we have been conditioned to believe is better. Okay? So English has to go. The solution to India's problems is very simple. It is Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a solution to India's problems. Sanskrit has to be India's national language. It is the only language in India that has the stature of being India's not just national language, but civilizational language. It has always been the glue that held India's civilization together. And it happens to be the most precise, the most nuanced, and the most scientific language in the whole world. Dmitry Mendeleev, the father of the periodic table and the most immensely influential chemist, the Russian scientist Dmitry Mendeleev, he basically was deeply influenced by Panini's Sanskrit. And in his periodic table, the missing elements, he gave them prefixes of Eka, Dvi, and Tri. Sanskrit prefixes. Later on, the periodic table was changed and it was given Latin names. But the first periodic table, the original periodic table, had Sanskrit prefixes to all the elements. So basically, that tells you that even the Europeans recognize the fact that Sanskrit is superior. It is the most scientific language. So India needs to revert to its civilizational language. That would be the right way to go for India. Okay, now let's talk about problems. Problems in India's lower education system. And these problems abound, as we all know. We have all gone through it. I'm sure for many of you, the pain is still fresh, right? So, what are the problems in India's lower education system? First of all, we are forced to memorize things. There is the idea of conceptual understanding, of understanding concepts, doesn't exist. There is no emphasis on understanding core concepts or solving problems, and creativity is abhorred. So all you are required to do is memorize, memorize, memorize. That's all. Don't try to understand things. Don't use logic, just memorize. Secondly, in our lower education system, they expect complete obedience, complete and unquestioning obedience. You are not allowed to take any initiative. You are not allowed to display any spontaneously. Everything is about obedience. Yes, madam. No, madam. Yes, sir. No, sir. May I stand up, teacher? May I sit down, teacher? May I go to the bathroom, teacher? May I drink water, teacher? You can't breathe without taking permission from your teachers. So this transforms India's children into zombies, right? And then there is this uniformity. There is no place for individuality. And there are mountains of homework, and tons of extracurricular nonsense that is an additional burden on the children. And then you are forced to answer questions instead of asking questions. And this suppresses and destroys creativity and imagination, because the only way to learn is by asking questions, and we are not allowed to ask questions. So this creates this Pavlovian conditioning of complete unquestioning obedience. It basically turns us into zombies, right? And then the entire life and existence of children revolves around exams. Exams, 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 high stakes exams. And exams are only once a year. And if you fail it, this once a year exam, then you have to repeat the entire grade again. And especially the 10th and 12th standard exams are especially stressful. They are make or break exams. And failure is a disaster. Failure is a terrible humiliation. And then you have all these different boards. You have so many different school boards, CBSE board, this board, that board. There is absolutely no standardization in the country. So if you get a certain percentage in one state and somebody else gets a different percentage in a different state, we don't know how to compare these two. We don't know how these two students stack up against each other. So there is no consistency. There is no rationality in this system. It's just terrible. No standardization. And then you have the three language systems. You have to study. You are forced to study three languages instead of studying actual things about the world. Instead of trying to get some real knowledge and information, you have to study three languages. You have to study Hindi, you have to study your local language, and then you have to study English. What a terrible burden it is, right? And then there is a system of scarcity. There is a scarcity of good schools. There is a scarcity of seats. And then you have reservations. Merit is non-existent in India. You may be a very good performer in school, but reservations will destroy your life. And then you have this discriminatory, biased, and horrible RTE Act, Right to Education. What a nice name it has, but it is discriminatory. It is biased. It is just evil. So you have all of this, and then you have coaching classes, tuition classes. This ridiculous commodification and commercialization of education. So basically, unless you have lots of money, unless you can afford it, you just can't get an education. I mean, is that a civilized society we're living in? And did I mention the fake history we are taught? The lies that are being taught in the name of history? So these are some of the problems, the major problems in the lower education system. Let's talk about higher education. What are the problems in the higher education system? Well, let's start once again with the same problem, memorization. Once again, even in the higher education system, you are forced to memorize. And in the exam, you have to just regurgitate whatever you have attempted to memorize. There is no emphasis on conceptual learning, on understanding concepts, on solving problems, on creativity, nothing. Just keep memorizing things. And then in the higher education system, at the master's degree level, etc., you have these obsolete, worthless subjects and degrees. What is home science? What is extension education? What is sociology? What is psychology? What is gender studies? What is political science? My question is very simple. What real world skills do these degrees impart to students? What real world problems can such degree holders solve? What goods or products can such degree holders produce? What new products can such degree holders create? What services can such degree holders provide? What new ideas can such people generate? Ideas that are genuinely valuable, that provide genuine value to society. So the question is, does the country need such services and degrees? The country has plenty of problems. The country needs engineers and technicians. It needs massive amounts of infrastructure. It needs software solutions. It needs software platforms. It needs manufacturing industries. It needs so many things. And these are the solutions to India's problems. But these degrees, they don't solve any of these problems. What problems do these degrees solve? What does home science solve? What does gender studies solve? What does psychology solve? What does political science solve? It doesn't give you any real life skills. If there was a master's degree in cricket, the sport of cricket, then they would not ask you to go and practice cricket. They would ask you to memorize textbooks. And in the exam, if you want to get the master's degree, you have to write essays. And that's how you become a master's degree in cricket. So that is the kind of education system we have, completely irrational, completely illogical. And what is the value of these degrees? If you have a master's degree from an Indian university, it has no value internationally, zero value, zero. If you have a PhD from India, it has zero value in the international academic arena. And then there is the problem of research. There is zero research orientation. And if there is any research being done, it is all fake, namesake research. The quality of research is abysmal. There is this website, a government website called Show the Ganga, on which you can go and check out various master's degree thesis and PhD thesis. It gives me a migraine to see the quality of these research theses, whatever subject it is, philosophy or home science or sociology or physics or whatever. The quality is abysmal. The quality of the Indian PhD, the average Indian PhD, is terrible. So that's the kind of research environment we have in India. And then there is this problem that degrees can actually be bought in India. You can buy a master's degree or a PhD degree. And FYI, for your information, this problem also exists in the US. Recently, there have been these revelations that even the Ivy League schools, the most prestigious universities in the US, actually sell degrees. Okay, so let's not get ahead of ourselves and start making fun of India. I am talking about the problems in India. There are problems elsewhere too. But yes, in India, there are certain places where you can actually buy degrees, and I'm sure every one of us knows one or two of those places. Some of them have been shut down by the system, but some are still there. That is just sad. And then you have these mediocre, disinterested professors and lecturers. And what about the wasted funds? You have a certain amount of funding that the IITs get. Where does the funding go? If you go to any IIT in India, you will find $1 million washrooms, $1 million auditoriums. But if you see the lab, you will see 20, 30-year-old equipment. So the equipment is obsolete. It is not being replaced with new equipment, but the investments are being done in the auditoriums and in the washrooms. That's the kind of priorities we have in India. So funds are being wasted. And in the academic system, if you're a professor or a lecturer or somebody who's trying to go up, then politics and seniority take precedence over performance. So if you want a promotion, you need to be good at politics. Your performance doesn't matter. You need to have lots of connections, and then you will get a promotion. So basically, India's science administrators are bureaucrats in lab coats. All the money and all the budget of the departments is being controlled by the bureaucrats and by the clerks. The head clerk in departments has more power and more authority than the head of department, which is something you see in every department in India. And the system promotes mediocrity. There are reservations everywhere, no merit. Even the faculty is hired on the basis of reservations. In the IITs today, less than 33% of seats are available for the general category. Everything else is reservations. This has destroyed the quality of the IITs. And what about the humanities departments? These are leftist, anti-national snake pits. And the sad thing is that even IITs are offering humanities degrees in sociology and psychology and philosophy and English literature, etc. Why do IITs, Indian Institutes of Technology, have to offer master's degrees and PhDs in humanities? In what way is that technology? So these humanities departments, they basically foment these sentiments of anti-nationalism, separatism, Hindu phobia, and they impart Marxist, Maoist, Naxalite ideological brainwashing to their students. And then you have the fact that colleges and universities are political recruiting grounds where politics takes precedence over education. So in all of this system, the students come lowest in the pecking order of the hierarchy. They have the least rights. Their needs come last. Their requirements come last. Their interest comes last. The system identifies and destroys talent, and it rewards mediocrity. So this is the situation today in India. So before I give some solutions, let's talk about some other places where education reforms were done. So one of these places is Turkey. So after the Turkish War of Independence, which was in the 1920s or something, I don't remember the dates. Look it up if you want. Okay, I haven't memorized the date, but there was this Turkish War of Independence that Mustafa Kemal Atatürk won against the European forces, and he was able to create a small unified Turkey out of the debris of the war. And then he embarked upon a spate of reforms in the entire country. Everything was reformed, including education. So before Turkey got its independence, it was part of the Ottoman Empire, which had a very Arabic and Persian oriented education system. You had madrasas and all this religious education, etc. There was no emphasis on science, on modernity, etc. So Ataturk revolutionized the education system. He abolished the use of the Arabic script. He co-opted the Latin script with some modifications to write Turkish. And so that is what he forced down the throat of the country. He forced the country to modernize with the strength of his will. One man forced the entire country to modernize. So he changed the education system. He made co-education mandatory. Boys and girls will sit together and study together. He emphasized on science. He placed a great deal of emphasis on mathematics and science. The things that I am basically advocating, the same things he was doing. And he transformed the country within a few short years. And the main thing is that he cleaned up the Turkish language. So the Turkish language was full of Arabic and Persian words. So he expunged the language of all of these foreign words, and he imported words from the Mongolian language, because the Mongolian language is the closest relative of Turkish. So that's what he did. He changed the entire system, and he changed the language itself. So it's possible to do it if you have the gumption and the fortitude to do that. The second place where such reforms happened is, guess it, it's Israel. So in 1948, when Israel became independent, it was a completely new nation. It was a hodgepodge of ethnic groups. They were all Jews, but they all came from different parts of the old world, from Europe, from various parts of Europe, from North Africa, from Ethiopia, etc. And they all spoke different languages. They all looked different. They all had different customs, etc. So in Israel, basically Israel embarked upon a revival of the Hebrew language, and they ensured that within a few short years, Hebrew became the primary language of all the children and all the young people. And after a couple of decades, Hebrew was everywhere. It was the official language of Israel, and it was adopted by everybody. So this is possible if you have a good leader, a strong leader who can do this. So once again, I'm showing this example of Israel, who took a bunch of people who were very different from each other. The only one thing in common was the religion, but they homogenized the society via the language while retaining the other kind of diversity that they had. So that's what Israel achieved. Now, the third section about reforms is China. So we consider China to be our greatest rival today, but are we really rivals of China? So China also had a terrible 20th century. Mao Zedong embarked upon the so-called Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, etc. Lots and lots of people unnecessarily lost their lives. Millions of people. The entire country was ravaged and devastated. The education system was in a shambles. In 1978, China embarked upon a reform, a program of reforms of its education system. And they started with the basic primary education system. So they have this standardized exam called the Baotao, which is something, it's like the Indian 10th or 12th standard exam. So they started slowly improving the procedures and the curriculum and the practices in their lower education system. Over the years, they improved it, refined it iteratively. And then in the 1990s, when the system was good enough at the primary level, that's when they embarked upon the next stages of their reforms, of their revolutionary education reforms that nobody in India speaks about. So what did they do? Let me show you. It starts with Project 211. Project 211 started in 1996. So what was this about? This project identified about 100 universities and colleges as national key universities, and it invested billions of dollars into these universities. In the 1990s, in 1996, okay, when China's GDP was much lower than what India's GDP is today. That's when they embarked upon this program, this project 211. So the objective was to raise the research standards of high level universities and to cultivate strategies for socio-economic development. The slogan was that we are preparing for the 21st century. We want to successfully manage 100 universities. And the outcome is that by 2008, China had about 100 institutions of higher education designated as Project 211 institutions because they were able to successfully meet certain scientific, technical, and human resources standards, and they were able to offer advanced degree programs. So, this is where China's hardcore reforms begin. But this is just the beginning, right? So, this was in 96 and 97. Then you had program 973. This was called the Basic National Basic Research Program. It was a basic research program. Okay. So this also was an investment of billions of dollars. The objectives were, first of all, to develop basic research and innovations and technologies aligned with China's national priorities in economic development and social development. Secondly, its objective was to achieve technology and strategic edge in various scientific fields, especially in the development of the rare earth minerals industry. So, this program has dedicated funding to areas such as agriculture and health and information, energy, environment, etc. And it is still undergoing. Okay, now we have program project 985. So this began in 1998. The objective was more ambitious. It was to promote the development and reputation of the Chinese higher education system by founding world class universities for the 21st century and by transforming existing universities. So this project allocates large amounts of funding, billions of dollars, to at least 39, 40 universities in order to build new research centers, improve facilities, hold international conferences, to attract world renowned faculty and visiting scholars, to help Chinese faculty attend conferences in other countries, to support specific scientific and engineering projects, and to meet the urgent needs of the Chinese Communist Party. So this is Project 985, which began in 1998. And then you had the C9 League, which also began in 1998 in China. It was initiated through the Project 985. So this C9 League is an official alliance of 9 universities in China. The objective is to promote the development and reputation of higher education in China. So universities in this C9 League account for about 3% of the country's researchers, but they receive more than 10% of the country's national research expenditure. And they produce more than 20% of the nation's academic publications and more than 30% of the total citations. So the C9 League is called the Chinese Ivy League. And there are a number of universities in that. So these universities were allocated special resources. They have special arrangements of sharing resources. They receive substantial funding for national from the national government, from the local governments, to build new research centers, to improve facilities, hold conferences, etc. Okay, so these are the most prestigious universities in all of China, and they consistently rank today among the best in the world. So that's what the C9 League has achieved. Then you have Plan 111. So this was a program of introducing talents of discipline to universities. The objective was to establish innovation centers for the purpose of technology transfer, the creation of 100 innovation centers to bring in at least 1,000 overseas talents into China from the top 100 universities and research centers worldwide. So this is an avenue, this Plan 111 is an avenue for foreign technology transfer of both civilian and military applications. This began in 2006. It established research centers at various universities that support defense related R&D. This is Plan 111 from 2006. Then in 2008, they had the 1,000 Talents Plan. So the best Chinese students often go abroad for advanced studies and they never come back. This results in a brain drain, something that we in India are very familiar with. So this 1,000 Talents Plan was created to reverse the brain drain, to build the size and prestige of China's university system by attracting world class overseas Chinese talent and also by attracting top foreign born talent from the world's best universities. So, this plan primarily targets Chinese citizens who are educated in elite programs overseas and who are successful as entrepreneurs, professionals, researchers, etc. It also targets foreign born experts, elite experts who are like best in their category with skills that are critical to China's international competitiveness in science and in innovation. So it has two mechanisms. One is it gives resources for permanent recruitment into Chinese universities, into Chinese academia. And secondly, it gives resources for short term appointments, which typically targets international experts. So that's what it does. It has three categories: Chinese scholars below 55 years of age, foreign scholars below 55 years of age, and young Chinese scholars below 40 years of age. So this program, the 1,000 Talents Plan, has been extremely successful in recruiting top international talent into China. Then in 2010, they started the Excellence League, which is an alliance of nine Chinese universities with strong backgrounds in engineering for promoting China's education for future engineers. Then in 2015, you have the double first class university plan, which aims to comprehensively develop elite Chinese universities and their individual faculty departments into world class institutions by the end of 2050. So it's a very ambitious plan, 2050. About 140 universities are currently involved in this. As of today, most of these universities are ranked among the top 500 universities in the world. Many of them are in the top 100. So that's what they have achieved after 2015. And in 2020, they started this program called Seven Sons of National Defense. So these are seven public research universities that collaborate closely with the People's Liberation Army. They devote at least half of their research budgets to military products, and they are all supervised by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology of China. So these are, my friends, only some of the reforms the Chinese have instituted. As you can see, it's a step by step plan. They are very ambitious. They have not invested billions of dollars into education, they have invested trillions of dollars into education. And that investment is giving them a great amount of dividend today. As you can see, China is progressing beyond anybody's wildest imagination. It is because they had this ambition from the 1970s onwards. And they planned step by step by step. They built a foundation and then they created a foundation, then they built upon it step by step, patiently. So that's what they have done. And this is the way you can reform education and create a powerful country. Education is the key to becoming a superpower. This shows you that. These examples that I just showed you demonstrate that their almost becoming a superpower today is not an accident. It has been planned and implemented properly. And it is all based on education. So many of you ask me almost every day, how can India become a superpower? Well, I just showed you how it is done. Right. So now let's talk about some solutions. Let's talk about solutions to India's lower education system. So first of all, we need to implement free education for everybody. That will eliminate the need for reservations. I'm not saying we need to do it today. As you can see from the Chinese example, it takes time. We need to have a plan, a 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year plan. But the objective should be to be able to provide free education to everybody and no reservations. So number one is that free education, no reservations. I'm not saying do it today or tomorrow. Make a plan and implement it properly. So that's one, free education. Number two, we need to have a two language formula. Sanskrit should be the national language, and secondly, the mother tongue. Education should be only in these two languages. No English. We don't need English. Okay. Number three, the focus should be on learning. It should be on learning how to communicate. It should be on learning mathematics and logic and history and culture, ethics, leadership, national interest. That's what we need to learn. That's what children need to learn in the lower education system. The focus should be on understanding oneself, understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your areas that need development, your likes, your dislikes, your unique personality, your qualities, your aptitudes. The children should be taught how to master the art and the science of critical thinking and learning. The focus should be on conceptual understanding, on problem solving, not on memorization. We need to abolish homework. Abolish homework. It is an unnecessary burden. 5 hours of study in school is more than enough for children. You don't need homework. Homework is just a means of controlling children outside of school. It is not necessary. And what's most important is that we need to standardize exams nationwide. Today, you have so many different boards, you have so many different exams, and there is no means of comparing the performance of students. So we need to standardize exams nationwide. Or we can draw inspiration from the Chinese Baotao examination or the American SAT system, the GRE system, the TOEFL system, whatever. But exams need to be standardized nationwide. You can have exams in different languages, but the curriculum should be the same. The exam should be made available free, and the exam should be understanding driven, not memorization driven. Basically, you should allow exams to be open book exams. Come with your textbooks, check out all the fundamentals in there, but you have to solve problems to get the correct answer. So exams should be based on understanding, not on memorization. These exams should be made available online 365 days a year, open to children of all ages. So even if a child is 8 years old and if he or she thinks that he or she can clear the 10th standard exam, they should be allowed to take it. It should be available online 365 days a year, free of charge, anytime you want, just like a driving exam. It should not be a once in a year horrible high stakes thing, which basically puts so much stress on children. Make it available online all the time. Take it as many times as you like. It doesn't matter if you pass or fail. That's how it should be. So that would really alleviate the burden of students and promote excellence in India. And the lower education should not last like 12 years or something. 10 years is more than enough. So basically, kids should start by about 3 or 4 years of age, and they should be done by the time they are 13 or 14. That should be enough. And then let's talk about solutions to the higher education system. So basically, in higher education, 90% of the education should be based on skills and it should be vocation driven, because most of us don't want to become professors or researchers. Most of us, most children, most people, they want a nice job in a discipline that interests them, maybe as a programmer or as a banker or whatever they like, as an accountant. So you don't need to have a master's degree or something like that for that. Just make all of this higher education, most of it, 90% of it should be vocation driven and skills driven. That's it. Maybe a 1 year diploma or 2 years diploma, and then you're out. And after that, children can go into apprenticeship or internship programs by the time they are 15, 16 years old. So imagine how much time will be saved in a person's life, and how much energy they will have when they go into the job market as an apprentice or as an intern. So that's the kind of thing that needs to be done. So 90% should be based on skills. It should be based on vocational education. That's it. 2 year diplomas or 1 year diploma, and then you're out. Then in higher education, you need to abolish the UGC. The UGC is an institution that has outlived its usefulness. It's about as relevant in the 21st century as steam engines. We need to abolish the UGC and replace it with a better, modern, more transparent, fully transparent alternative. Then you have the problem of the humanities departments, which are snake pits of leftist and Maoist academics. We need to close them all, sack them all, bring in new talent. Then we need to sack the mediocre and non performing or dishonest professors, bring in new talent. India has millions of graduates and PhDs who need jobs. Get rid of these non performers, get in new people who are motivated and who want to do well for the country, right? And it's important to give these academicians world class compensation, not these stifling small government salaries. We need to create the conditions for a reverse brain drain, like the Chinese have done. So we can import talent from abroad, like the Chinese have done, Indians or other countries, other nationalities as well, doesn't matter. Invite them and encourage these world class academics and researchers and Indians working abroad to work in India. And we need to free the universities of bureaucratic and political control. Vice chancellors are political appointees. What do they do for the education system? What do they contribute to the education system? What does a registrar contribute to education? Nothing. So, why do we need these positions? Get rid of all the unnecessary positions. Free the universities of bureaucratic and political control. Bureaucrats and administrators should report to the professors, not the other way around. And we need to allow the professors, the academics, the heads of departments and professors to own and control the budgets. If this is done, then corruption will immediately disappear. Right now, the budgets are being controlled by the clerks and the peons who have more power and authority than even a head of department. So this needs to change. And we need to make universities research driven. Let world class academics control the direction of research. Ensure that research projects are very well funded. That's how India can get ahead in research and development, right? And we need to discard all the anti Indian propaganda driven, flawed, distorted history textbooks. We need to introduce new, balanced, historically accurate textbooks. That is very important because children are being brainwashed by this fake history, by this distorted history. And we need to ensure that all new research results are published in Indian academic journals, not in foreign journals. We need to promote Indian academic journals. And lastly, we need to aim to have at least 10 universities in the world's top 100 in the next 10 years, and 10 more in the top 200 as well. So we need to identify 20, 30 such universities. If needed, we can start a few new universities, and we need to staff them with a mix of experience and promise. And this has to be assessed and evaluated every 10 years. We need to use the lessons learned, identify more universities for world class status for the next 10 years. So this is a process that takes time, but it is definitely very much possible. It is something India needs to invest in. We need to learn the lessons from China. The Chinese have shown the world how it can be done. So India can also do this. So that, in short, my friends, is my overview of the current situation in India's academic system, the problems that we are facing, and the solutions that can be implemented, that should be implemented. Our vision should be to have a powerful India, an India that is a superpower in the next 20 years. It should be an India that is ambitious and prosperous, not an India that basically is a source of cheap labor for foreign countries. I mean, we are seeing statements from high government officials saying that our key strategy should be to make India a source of labor for foreign countries. That is a slave mentality. I mean, that's not the kind of vision we should have for India. India should be a world leader in the next 20 years in every sphere. And it is very much possible if you see the example of China, but it has to start today, because the 2020s are the decade in which the world is going to turn around. It's going to change completely. And if India doesn't start now, then India will be left far behind and India will not be able to catch up. So now is the time to transform India's education system. India needs to come up with a comprehensive 20-year plan with the objectives that I have put across, and it can be implemented. It can be done. India has the talent and all that. to do it. So, that in short, my friends, is what I have to say. That's my overview. That's my presentation of what can be done in India. And education is the key to making India a powerful country. China would not have been where it is today if it had not invested trillions of dollars into its education system. It is not a waste of money, it is not a wasted investment. It is something that will pay you back many times more in the future. So India needs to bite the bullet. India's leadership needs to show some fortitude and gumption and do the right thing. India needs to invest in a powerful education system. India has the best minds in the world, the best talent in the world. It's time to set India free and unleash the true potential of India. So, that, my friends, is what I have to say. I am not taking questions today. In tomorrow's session, I will take all your questions, any question that you have about the education system. So that's it for today, my friends. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow and take your questions. Thank you and have a good night. Have a good day. Bye.